Hello everyone, and welcome to day 2 of Yarn Wire's online Summer Institute. My name is Cleare and I'm a guest composer at this year's Institute. And I'm going to present today on the idea of place in my music, both in recent works and in future works, which will be closely related to where I'm from and currently live, which is in the Midlands of Ireland. So the compositional process of my work almost always evolves from the desire to explore places through sound. What might be important to immediately expand upon here is what a place might be within my work. Place in my pieces often include sonic explorations of both animate and inanimate matter, how that distinction doesn't hold often. Of what's visible and tangible in our present environment. Place can equally be related to the past, like exploring buried geological strata, signifying a past way of life. Place can be related to future possible worlds and imagining alternative ways of being through sound. Place can be superimpositions or dialogues between some or all of the above. With these points in mind, I suppose I consider each piece I've written as like a psychogeographical place in itself, containing both real and imagined phenomena, a fusion of psychology, geography, and sound. I often think about Kierkegaard's observation that life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards. And I ponder on how true and also cruel a reality that is. It always reminds me that what I really enjoy about being an artist is having the permission to live both backwards and forwards through the sonic places I create, and to capture and explore the many streams of energy that exist in any one place or moment. I am generally drawn towards places of wild, anarchic sonic material. And in recent years, with the addition of staging and choreography, I have been working on how to make this matter not only sonically present in a piece, but visually present as well. So a piece I'd like to show an example of today is the piece I wrote for Yarn Wire in 2014. And this piece is called I Should Live in Wires for Leaving You Behind. And in this piece, I suppose I move a little bit further towards the idea of visualizing space within a concert venue, or visualizing place. In this piece, there are what I imagine as two places, a place inside the piano and a place outside of it. The piece begins with all 4 performers playing on the inside strings of one piano, sculpting what I refer to in the score as a crystal organ. As the hands of the 3 performers are slowly extracted from the inside of the piano and placed on instruments outside of the piano, the place outside of this one piano slowly accumulates, leading to the disintegration of the crystal organ that the piece began with, and to the foundation of a new, wiry, more chaotic world outside of the piano. So I'm just going to show an excerpt from this piece. Again, it relates to what I've been speaking about in terms of places within my music. So just give me a moment to share the video with you. Okay, so sorry to interrupt the piece. That's just the very opening, as I said, this idea of the inside of the piano being a place. I'm going to scroll through the video quickly, just in the interest of time. This video is available to watch in full on Yarnwire's Vimeo site. But as you can see at this moment in the piece, you can see Ian has just pulled one hand from outside the piano into this kind of outside world space where there are other instruments that lead to what I call this kind of wilder, chaotic world outside the piano. And if I'm to scroll through, even just through the video, you will see that each of the performers, next, Ian pulls out his other hand and starts to play completely outside the piano. And if I scroll forward, you'll see Russell is slowly making his way to this other outside place. And Russell is then joins with Ian. And then you can see here, Laura is making her way around the piano to also join Russell and Ian. And towards the end of the piece, you'll then see the three of them having formed this other place outside the piano from where they began. And you'll see Ning still playing in the other space we began in, inside the piano. So this is also relates to the title of the piece, this idea of leaving behind. So there's that space that we began with is kind of left behind, and we move into this kind of other world outside the piano. So I'll just play a little bit from the very end of the piece so you can compare how the piece began, what you've just heard with that. Okay, so thanks to Yarnwire for that performance. And as I said, it's available to watch the whole video on Yarnwire's Vimeo page. So metaphors of what's often referred to as the natural world and how humans and our technology interact with them stand at the fore of my work, in the same way that they stand at the fore of where and how I grew up in the Irish countryside. As a child, I learned to play both Western classical music and Irish traditional music. And even though I enjoyed both very much, I remember thinking they were both very limited systems of information and expression, like a very simple surface of a much more complex, multi-dimensional system surrounding it. I would sit at the piano and play D4 and then D sharp 4, and would think to myself that there is such a distance between these semitones, so much information missing, and the mechanisms of the instruments I was playing, piano and woodwinds, would not allow me to bridge the distance between such semitones. Playing the common intervals of a piece in A major or E minor felt to me like taking giant one-dimensional steps and leaps, and I wanted to traverse the sound in between these sounds. I would listen to the sounds of the environment around me and hear them mostly hovering around one main tone, and that there were so many gradations to this tone. Even though I didn't know of the terms at the time, the sounds that I was compelled by were microtonally and timbrally complex in a way that the tonal music I was playing was completely lacking. And furthermore, they possessed their own temporal and rhythmic character, and one that was not bound by periodic pulse. Looking back, I realized that I do not seem to have ever discriminated between music and noise as very different things, either on a frequential or a temporal level, in the way that most people do. To me, every and all sound is a component on a huge scale of sound, which one could compose from, and none is more valuable or worthy than the next until you make the decision to create a hierarchy between them. And this thinking is representative of the work I now make, to explore places and ideas, both real and imagined, through sound, to present alternative orders of sonic being, and to do this in a way that three-dimensionalizes sonic material and the space it inhabits. When I describe my work as I just have, it often surprises general audiences that I use sound to think and create in this way, that this type of direction and subject matter could be at the heart of a musical work, that the place of my music is often rooted in rural Ireland. How can sound be an expressive medium for such a topic? And what is there to express about this often perceived as dull and eventless landscape and its happenings? I am often presented with the question, both in Ireland and abroad, of how does someone from where I am from end up writing the ultra-modern music that I do? Why would I want to live there again, which after years of living away, I now do? As if the area couldn't be anything but a bleak and backward wilderness from which to escape. And I more often than not feel adrift from the world of music, because when I describe myself as a composer working in music, what I do and create is immediately misunderstood. And I can understand why. Such words as music and composer are misleading for people. And I have been increasingly feeling that these are not terms that I really want to use anymore. This is why I use the word sonic, because it relates more suitably to the huge scale of sound that I mention above and create for each and every piece. And so my role is in devising this scale and composing from it. And this process often feels both scientific and sculptural in nature. Measuring a sound's frequency and volume and finding new harmonic and inharmonic relationships between different points on a sonic scale. It is composerly or structurally conceived in the same way someone composing within a tonal system produces work from working with consonance and dissonance. But somehow I feel this word of composer belongs only to a Western tonal tradition. Perhaps what also creates detachment from these labels are the places within the work and how and where the work is presented in concert venues. Given that I think in such visual forms for work that isn't always visual in presentation, how do I create an evocative sense of place in art that is sonically driven? One future project that presents this and will extend this challenge in a variety of manners is again related to my home terrain, and particularly to the area of LOC Aura. So I'm going to show a picture of LOC Aura now. So LOC Aura is central to the history of the Irish Midlands. Over centuries, it has transformed from a lake which covered the central plain of the country, which was home to the very first human settlement in Ireland during the Mesolithic age, to the raised bogs of the 20th century, which mechanized peat harvesting. This area of the Irish Midlands now serves as a sanctuary for wildlife, a place to walk and cycle, and at the core of this is a sculpture park, where the industrial materials of peat manufacturing are recycled into land and environmental sculptures and placed back onto the terrain that they harvested for many decades. So I can show you an example of one of these sculptures. So this is a piece called Passage by Alan Coonahan. And as I explained, the materials come from old machinery that was given to sculptors like Alan to recycle into the landscape. So these unusual works of art dramatically change the landscape with varying contrasts throughout the seasons. Over time, the effects of nature have altered the sculptures in color and developed fascinating colonies of plant growth, enabling them to become a type of hybrid landscape of natural and mechanical materials. And what's interesting about this particular passage that we look at as well, this piece, if you see the different heights of the materials from this passage walkway up to the three prongs, these different heights mark where the land actually used to be, where the surface used to be. So if you look at the highest prong, before this particular stretch of land was harvested for peat, the surface used to be actually up there. So people used to walk there. And the harvesting of peat has made the whole surface lower. And again, if you walk further up, well, a few miles really from there, you get to the area where this Mesolithic lake was. And that is buried way, way under the surface of this space. So it's an area where there's just been so many forms of life, and they grow over each other, and then they're kind of harvested back down to a certain level again. So I guess the ground level in this area has changed dramatically from century to century. So in a way, even standing on one place, one surface, that surface has kind of lived so many different lives. So in the following video, I'm going to show, just find the video. Just going to show a short excerpt from a video of me looking at the warehouses in this area of LOC Aura, the warehouses that are open to artists to use the materials for artistic purposes. So I'll just show you an excerpt from this video. It was produced by Johannes List and directed by Johannes List. And I'll just show the beginning, and the link will be available to see more of it if you want to see the rest of it. Okay, so just an excerpt to show you the area that I was describing, this parklands and the warehouses that are there now to incorporate materials into the landscape in artistic forms. So I suppose I'm planning to develop work about this area and in this area over the next years. And I see this project taking many forms. Many forms, both transportable and fixed on site, and most importantly, for place to be firmly visible at any performance, whether that means creating site-specific sonic work at LOC Aura, or bringing newly made site-aligned instruments from LOC Aura into concert spaces around the world. That people can travel to this Midlands area, or the Midlands can travel to people. I want the sound of this land and its history to drive whatever sculptural, land art, theatrical, performance art collaborations this work may produce. And not only the sound of its recent past, but of its ancient past too. So as I mentioned earlier, the Midlands where I come from lie at the very centre of Ireland, but they're rarely considered to be the core of activity in the country. It is far from the most well-known area of Ireland, not just internationally, but nationally too, as many Irish people that I meet for the first time often tell me that I'm the first person they've ever met from Offaly. And this is astounding if you consider the relatively small size and population of Ireland. So it's generally forgotten or unknown that at one time, the Irish Midlands were what Manchán Magon describes in his rousing article on Midda as the core of all life, the multidimensional center. For our ancestors, this is a quote from Manchán, for our ancestors, there was no doubt where all life and energy radiated from. So if I show you a map, just to give you an idea of this, the history of this place. One moment, I'll just share. So this would be the map. So this is a kind of current map of Ireland. And you can see the Cleare, which is the 4 provinces. So Ireland is currently divided into 4 provinces: Connacht, which you can see here, Leinster, Munster, and Ulster. And in the Irish languages, these are known as na Cleare Cúige. Note that the Irish for province is Cúige, which means 5th. Therefore, Cleare Cúige is actually 4/5. So what about the 5th fifth? Well, herein lies the tale of Midda, or the Midlands. So if I show you the next map, which would be an older map of the country, you can still see the Connacht, Munster, Leinster, and Ulster. But here you also have Midda, the 5th province. Well, from the Iron Age onwards, the Midlands were the royal centre of governance, the centre of all life in Ireland. And in spring of each year, people would gather on the hill of Ishnok and other important centres for Beltana, which was described again by Manchán Magon in an article of his on Midda as a ritual of rejuvenation, sparking the land into fertility by means of sacred bonfires, which then spread out from the centre to all points around Ireland. Its impact on the Irish psyche was profound. The fire radiated out in all directions, shining, warming, enlightening, and illuminating the darkness. Ishnok and other sacred sites in the Midlands were the navel of our world, the centre of our firmament. The disconnection from it shows how far people have drifted from their ancient core. But how could this happen? Well, it's simple, really. Those who colonized the country, from Christian missionaries to Vikings to Normans to the English Tudors, made sure to disempower any vital centres and supplant them with their own, or move them to become coastal ports, where trading and consumerism flourished. So animism, the illuminating life force within all things, which the people of the Irish Midlands lived and died by, slowly disappeared into obscurity. And so now, today in Ireland, we just go by 4 provinces. And that 5th province of the middle of the country has kind of been lost over time, even though it used to be the actual very centre of governance in the country. So I suppose maybe to sum up where all these points lead me to in terms of future work, in the current climate crisis that we face, where humans have depleted natural resources in such callous and capitalist ways, and where populations need to decentralize from overcrowded, buckling urban centres, how can animism become a part of my project in the Midlands? How can I create work there that proposes a prosperous vision for post-industrial life? Climate action on a site that in the last century has badly damaged the climate. How can sound art be a medium for reconnecting people with the earth? A place that invites the public to engage artistically with the materials around them, without the conventions of a concert hall, envisioning a future of sustainable energy where land and non-human energy are treated with the respect they deserve. Finally, I return to the title of this presentation, Place in My Music. The psychogeographical place within my concert music has always been rooted in the geological and industrial soundscape of my rural homeland. And I now hope it will find a form to be tangibly present on that homeland's terrain, in what I hope will be a place for art that provokes questions about the future, acknowledging the post-industrial world it now inhabits and the spirituality of the ancient past of Midda that is buried under it. A place for sonic gathering, activism, reflection, and imagining, for all that lies between those 2 worlds and all of what comes next. So that's it for me. Thanks for joining us. And I'll hopefully see everyone soon.